Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for attending tonight. First of all, I've travelled through Western Queensland last week, and we always travel between sessions somewhere in Queensland, and people are really hurting. Farmers, small businesses are really hurting. Energy prices has come forward as number one by every single person except one town. And we'll get onto that one town too. How much has electricity CPI increased in Australia since publication from September 1980 to December 2016?
Senator will have to take that on notice.
Okay, I can tell you that it is a 678% increase over that period. So it's gone up 7 times, electricity prices. Gas. How much has gas CPI increased in Australia since publication from September 1989 to December 2016?
We will have to take that on notice, Senator.
Okay. The total, I'd like to see what you come up with in the annual, but in the total over that period, 255% increase, with more than half in the last 8 years. And that's devastating to people in the cities as well as rural Queensland. Given the vast quantities of untapped energy resources and human entrepreneurship, our creativity and our initiative, are there government policies or interventions driving up electricity and gas prices, especially since the late 2000s?
I think that's something you might have to take on notice.
Okay, thank you. It just reminds me, and I ask you, are you aware of the greatest miracle in human civilization, and that is that in the last 160 years, we have lifted billions of people out of poverty, given them independence from nature's extremes, and created unparalleled comfort, longevity and health. Are you aware of that? Is that something you remember?
That's a very broad question. Perhaps you could be a little bit more specific for the fiscal group.
Well, I think of economist George Reisman. He's a professor. In his book, he said the achievement of a fully free market in energy would ensure a resumption of the growing abundance and declining real cost of energy that has characterised the Western world in the 200 years prior to the 1970s. That's a remarkable achievement. Is there any, as Senator McDonald said, cost-benefit analysis applied to the policies of your department?
Senator, so we haven't done any analysis on this, but if you're making the statement that affordable and reliable energy and helps lift people out of poverty and gives them living standards, then I'd have to agree.
Are there any cost-benefit analyses done on the policies?
For the global?
Yeah, for Australian policies with regard to energy.
So if I could jump in, Senator, excuse me. In a way, this goes to Senator McDonald's question from earlier. For example, has there been an assessment of the overall impact on the Australian economy, for example, of meeting Paris targets and the like?
This is not just about climate, though. This is about government intervention in the markets.
Yep.
Government legislation.
Yeah.
I just let him finish that.
Sure.
Yeah. So the answer is we certainly have not undertaken that work, as the answer to Senator McDonald's question suggested. Work was done. The broad point I'd make is managing to find an assessment of a policy on the economy, i.e. what is the impact, the overall impact on GDP, is a fairly complex exercise, and it normally requires purpose-built modelling capability to do it. So it's the sort of thing that was done, and this is what we'll take on notice, but I suspect we'll find that it was done back in 2009 or thereabouts, when the CPRS, the carbon price was under active consideration, and also the Garno report certainly did some work on trying to make an assessment of what is the overall cost to GDP. But it's got to be a significant policy that has sort of whole of economy consequences, and the modelling itself is complicated and challenging and requires significant investment to do it. So some of the sorts of policy interventions that you might be referring to aren't necessarily always amenable to that sort of whole of economy modelling that would generate a reduction in GDP or an increase in GDP and the like. That's not to say analysis can't be done, or quite rigorous quantitative analysis about the impact on prices and that sort of thing. But in terms of a cost-benefit analysis or a CGE model, which would try and work out the overall impact on the economy, it requires probably a policy intervention of greater scale.
I appreciate your courage in attempting to answer the question and saying that it is complicated, but when I'm sitting in the Shire Council of the Ballon Shire Council of St George and they're telling me that 100 houses in the town of Dirranbandi's 300 houses are possibly vacant because of policies inflicted on them from this, then I get very, very concerned and I want to know why. And one of the things, Mr Brennan, I genuinely do appreciate you jumping in, is that there is virtually no accountability from what I can see coming out of business in this parliament. And that disappoints me. It concerns me greatly. It really does when you see so many people pushed around in Western Queensland.
Is there a question?
No, there isn't. I'm just complimenting him for appreciating his courage in jumping in.
I'm
So
conscious
I'll go to
of
the
time,
next
so
one.
I do need to stick to questions.
How many pieces of legislation, that's red, blue and green tape, blue tape being the UN, how many pieces of legislation have been cumulatively passed federally in Australia from 1970 to 2016?
I think
Not an answer to no.
you're being very evil, Senator McDonald. I think we might have to take that on notice.
Okay.
And I think, just probably maybe in the interest of time, we might need to take a lot of these questions on notice just to...
I've got one more, I
Okay, cool.
think. No, two more. They're both pretty quick. Thinking of farmers and small business, how many pieces of regulation have been cumulatively passed federally in Australia from 1970 to 2016?
I
Pieces
think
of regulation.
we'll have to take that on notice also.
Last one, Senator. How
Probably
much of
too
an
many,
economic
Brendan.
cost, in say money terms per household, is the accumulation of legislation and regulation to Australia? The financial impact on people.
I think we'll have to take that on notice also, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.